Welcome to True Crime Vault, your new home for chilling and suspenseful crime stories from all corners of the English-speaking world. Ever wonder about the dark secrets hidden in the quiet suburbs of the United States, or the unsolved mysteries lurking in the foggy streets of the United Kingdom? We dive deep into fictional cases that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Our stories will take you from the vast landscapes of Canada and Australia to the beautiful, yet sometimes eerie, scenery of New Zealand. Each episode is a carefully crafted narrative, designed to make you feel like you're right there, piecing together the clues. We explore the minds of fictional detectives and victims, creating a world of suspense and intrigue just for you. Stay tuned to start enjoying the next part of our true crime stories around the globe. Thank you so much for always following and sharing with friends and family. We love you all, our subscribers and followers.
Thanks for watching once again. Can't wait to share the next true crime story from somewhere else in the world. Stay tuned. Have you ever wondered how criminal profilers get inside the minds of the most dangerous individuals? They piece together clues from a crime scene to build a picture of the person responsible. Their work is fascinating, a blend of science, art, and intuition. But what happens when that picture is wrong? What happens when a single mistake in a profile allows a monster to walk free, to continue their reign of terror while investigators chase a ghost? Today, we re-diving deep into one of the most chilling cases where a flawed profile led to a catastrophic failure of justice. This isn't just about a mistake, it's about the lives that were shattered because of it. It all began in the quiet suburbs of a city just like yours. A series of brutal crimes had the community paralyzed with fear. The attacks were random, yet meticulously planned. The police were stumped. They had no witnesses, no forensic leads, nothing. Desperate, they called in a renowned criminal profiler. Let's call him Dr. Alastair Finch. Finch was a legend in his field, known for his uncanny ability to paint a vivid picture of the unsub or unknown subject. Finch reviewed the case files, walked the crime scenes, and absorbed every detail. He noted the high level of organization, the control exerted over the victims, and the lack of any obvious motive like robbery. After weeks of intense analysis, he delivered his profile. The person they were looking for, Finch declared, was a white male, late 30s to early 40s. He would be highly intelligent, charming, and hold a position of authority, perhaps a professional like a doctor or a lawyer. He would be married, a pillar of his community, hiding his dark side behind a mask of normality. This type of killer, a classic psychopath, feels no empathy and sees others as mere objects for their gratification. The profile was compelling, a textbook example of an organized offender. The police force, armed with this new direction, focused all their resources on finding this man. They scrutinized local professionals, cross-referenced lists of community leaders, and spent months investigating men who fit Finch's description. The problem was, none of them were the killer. While the police chased this phantom, the real perpetrator struck again. And again, the community's fear turned to anger. The pressure was immense. So, where did the profile go so wrong? The mistake wasn't in the analysis of the crime scene behavior itself, but in the interpretation of the motivation behind it. Finch had locked onto the idea of a classic psychopath. Psychopathy is a personality disorder characterized by a lack of empathy, manipulativeness, and a grandiose sense of self-worth. They are often chameleons, blending in perfectly. The organized nature of the crimes seemed to fit this model perfectly. However, there's another, often misunderstood, condition: sociopathy. While the terms are sometimes used interchangeably, there are key differences. Sociopaths tend to be more impulsive and erratic. While they also lack empathy, their behavior can be shaped more by their environment and upbringing. They might form attachments to a small group or individual, but see the rest of society as an enemy. They are less likely to maintain the mask of sanity for long periods. The profiler had completely dismissed the possibility of a sociopath because the crimes were so well organized. This was the critical error. He assumed organization equals a stable, intelligent psychopath. But what if the organization wasn't a product of innate personality, but of obsessive, meticulous planning driven by a different psychological need? Let's also talk about geographical profiling. This is a fascinating subfield where profilers use the locations of crimes to determine an offender's anchor point, usually their home or workplace. They create a probability map, a hot zone where the killer is most likely to live. In this case, the crimes were spread out across a wide area, which further reinforced Finch's theory of a killer with a car, a stable job, and the means to travel. He was looking for someone in the affluent suburbs, far from the crime clusters. Months turned into a year. The task force was exhausted, and leads had dried up. The community had lost faith. Then, a rookie detective, reviewing the case files for the 10th time, noticed something everyone else had missed. It wasn't about the crimes themselves, but what happened in between them. There were small, seemingly insignificant petty crimes, vandalism, minor thefts, occurring in a tight cluster in a lower-income neighborhood. These small crimes would spike in the days leading up to a major attack. He brought his theory to his superiors, who were skeptical. What did petty vandalism have to do with a sophisticated serial killer? But the young detective persisted. He argued that the killer wasn't a calm, collected psychopath. He was a deeply insecure individual, possibly a sociopath, whose rage and frustration would build up. The petty crimes were him testing the waters, small releases of pressure before the final, explosive act. He wasn't charming or successful. He was likely a loner, unemployed, or in a menial job, someone who felt invisible to the world. This new theory completely inverted the original profile. They weren't looking for a respected professional in the suburbs. They were looking for a nobody in a rundown part of town. This also changed the geographical profile. The killer wasn't traveling into these areas to commit crimes. He was already there. This was his turf. The spread-out nature of the main crimes wasn't about sophisticated travel. It was about creating a buffer, a misdirection to keep the focus away from his home base. The task force, with nothing to lose, shifted its focus. They started looking at low-level offenders in the neighborhood the rookie detective had identified. They weren't looking for a doctor or lawyer anymore. They were looking for a recluse, someone with a history of minor offenses and social isolation. And they found him. He was a man in his early 20s, living in his mother's basement, just blocks away from the center of that vandalism cluster. He was unemployed, had a juvenile record for petty theft, and was described by neighbors as quiet and strange. He was the complete opposite of Dr. Finch's profile. A search of his home uncovered irrefutable evidence linking him to every single one of the major crimes. When interrogated, his psychology became clear. He wasn't a cool, calculating psychopath. He was a deeply insecure sociopath, filled with rage at a world he felt had rejected him. The meticulous planning of his crimes wasn't a sign of intelligence, but of obsession. It was the one area of his life where he could feel powerful and in control. He was the invisible man who had found a way to make the entire city see him, to fear him. The case of the mistaken profile serves as a powerful lesson. Criminal profiling is not an exact science. It's a tool, and like any tool, it can be flawed. The over-reliance on archetypes, like the charming psychopath, can create a dangerous tunnel vision, blinding investigators to possibilities that don't fit the neat and tidy box. It highlights the crucial difference between psychopathy and sociopathy, and how a misunderstanding of these conditions can send an investigation spiraling in the wrong direction. It also shows the importance of integrating all forms of analysis. The behavioral profile, the geographical data, and old-fashioned police work must all work together. The breakthrough didn't come from a legendary profiler. It came from a rookie detective who looked at the small details everyone else had dismissed. This story is a stark reminder that the human mind is infinitely complex. Killers don't always fit the molds we create for them. Justice is found not just in grand theories, but in the relentless pursuit of truth. even when it leads to the most unexpected places. It's about questioning assumptions and always looking for the detail that doesn't fit the picture. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this case as fascinating as I did, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into the world of criminal psychology. Stay safe and see you next time. Thanks for watching once again. Can't wait to share the next true crime story from somewhere else in the world. Stay tuned. This content is generated for creative and entertainment purposes only and should not be taken as medical advice. The information presented is not a substitute for professional medical consultation. Always consult with a qualified healthcare provider for any health concerns or before making any decisions related to your health or treatment. If you are experiencing a medical emergency, please seek immediate help from emergency services. For mental health support, resources are available from organizations like the National Alliance on Mental Illness, NAMI, and the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, SAMHSA. What happens when a family, following every guideline, finds themselves in a situation they never imagined, a situation where the very system they trusted seems to turn its back on them? Today, we're diving deep into a story that's as complex as it is heart-wrenching. It's a case that raises important questions about public health, individual experiences, and the conversations we're having, and perhaps the ones we aren't. This isn't just about one family's journey. It's about navigating a world of medical information, seeking answers, and the challenge of making your voice heard when you feel like no one is listening. We'll explore the official guidelines, the data that supports them, and the established processes for addressing health concerns. But we'll also step into the shoes of those who feel their personal stories don't fit neatly into the statistics. Imagine this. You're a parent, doing everything you believe is right for your child. You follow the established schedules, you trust the experts, and you believe in the system designed to protect public health. Then, your child's health takes an unexpected turn. You start asking questions, looking for explanations. You turn to the very authorities you placed your faith in, but the answers you receive feel incomplete. The reports you file seem to disappear into a bureaucratic maze. This is the reality for some families. Their journey often begins with a subtle change, something that only a parent might notice. It's a shift in behavior, a new health issue, or a developmental delay. Initially, it might be dismissed as a phase or a common childhood ailment. But as days turn into weeks, and weeks into months, the concern grows. Doctors' visits become more frequent. Specialists are consulted. Tests are run. Yet, a clear diagnosis remains elusive. For these families, the quest for answers can become a full-time job. They spend countless hours researching online, poring over medical journals, and connecting with other parents in similar situations. They document everything, every symptom, every appointment, every response, or lack thereof. They create timelines, trying to connect the dots and find a pattern that might explain what's happening to their child. One of the most significant challenges they face is the feeling of being dismissed. When they bring up their observations and concerns, they sometimes feel their experiences are categorized as anecdotal, statistically insignificant, or simply coincidental. This can be incredibly frustrating. For a parent watching their child struggle, their experience is anything but an anecdote. It's their entire reality. They're not necessarily looking to challenge the whole system, but to understand how their child's unique situation fits within it. This leads to a crucial point of discussion: the difference between population-level data and individual health outcomes. Public health policies are built on large-scale studies. They are designed to achieve the greatest good for the greatest number of people, and the data overwhelmingly supports the success of these programs in preventing disease and saving lives. This is a cornerstone of modern medicine, and its importance cannot be overstated. However, medicine is also deeply personal. Every individual has a unique genetic makeup, a unique immune system, and a unique set of environmental exposures. What works perfectly for 99.9% of the population might lead to a different outcome for a small minority. This is where the system can feel rigid. When a family believes their child is that rare exception, they need a pathway for their concerns to be heard, investigated, and addressed with compassion and scientific rigor. The existing channels for reporting adverse events are a critical part of this process. These systems are designed to collect data that can signal potential issues not identified in initial clinical trials. But what happens when the data collected doesn't lead to a clear conclusion, or when the reported symptoms are complex and multifaceted? This is the gray area where many of these families find themselves. They've followed the procedure, they've filed the reports, but they're left waiting for a response that provides clarity or a path forward. The emotional toll of this journey is immense. Parents often feel isolated, misunderstood, and even blamed. They navigate a storm of emotions, from fear and confusion to anger and determination. They have to become their child's fiercest advocate, learning to speak the language of medicine and law just to be heard. This advocacy is born out of love, a powerful force that drives them to leave no stone unturned. It's also important to recognize the position of healthcare professionals and public health officials. They operate within a framework of evidence-based medicine and established protocols. Their recommendations are based on decades of research and a consensus within the global scientific community. They are committed to public safety and are often managing immense workloads. The challenge lies in bridging the gap between broad public health directives and the specific, urgent needs of an individual patient. How can the system become more responsive to those who fall through the cracks? One potential path forward is fostering a more open and collaborative dialogue. This means creating spaces where parents can share their stories without fear of judgment, and where healthcare providers feel empowered to listen and investigate, even when the symptoms don't fit a textbook definition. It means valuing lived experience alongside statistical data, using both to paint a more complete picture of health. It also involves a commitment to ongoing research. Science is not static. It evolves as we learn more. By studying these complex cases with an open mind, we can deepen our understanding of immunology, genetics, and the myriad factors that influence a child's development. This research can help refine protocols, identify potential risk factors, and ultimately, improve health outcomes for everyone. These stories are not about assigning blame. They are about seeking understanding. They are about advocating for a healthcare system that is not only effective on a mass scale, but also compassionate and responsive to the individual. Every child's health matters. Every parent's concern deserves to be taken seriously. The goal is a shared one: to ensure every child has the opportunity to live their healthiest, happiest life. As we conclude, let's reflect on the core of this issue. It's about communication, trust, and the human side of medicine. It's about finding a balance between robust, data-driven public health policies and a personalized, patient-centered approach to care. These are not mutually exclusive goals. In fact, achieving both is the key to building a stronger, more resilient healthcare system for the future. The conversations may be difficult, but they are essential. By listening to one another with empathy and a shared commitment to the truth, we can move forward together. Thank you for joining me on this deep dive into a very complex topic. If this story resonated with you, please share your thoughts respectfully in the comments. And if you believe these conversations are important, consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel for more content that explores the critical issues of our time. Stay curious, stay engaged, and take care. Thanks for watching once again. Can't wait to share the next true crime story from somewhere else in the world. Stay tuned. Picture this: a quiet, suburban street, the kind where everyone knows their neighbors. A warm summer evening in July 2015. Inside one of these seemingly perfect homes, a trivial argument is brewing between a married couple, Renee and Brent. It's the kind of disagreement most couples have and forget by morning. But for Renee and Brent, this argument would be their last. It would spiral into a chain of events so dark and twisted, it would leave an entire community in shock and investigators grappling with a case that seemed to defy all logic. This is the story of how a simple disagreement ignited a firestorm of deceit, betrayal, and ultimately, murder. A story that proves that sometimes, the most dangerous secrets are hidden behind the most ordinary doors. Brent and Renee seemed to have it all. They met, fell in love, and built a life together. They had a beautiful home, friends, and what appeared to be a stable, loving relationship. To the outside world, they were the picture of happiness. But as we all know, appearances can be deceiving. Beneath the surface, cracks were beginning to show. Financial pressures, unspoken resentments, and the daily grind of life had started to take their toll. The small disagreements became more frequent, the silences longer. That fateful July evening, the argument that erupted was about something mundane, something forgotten by time. But it wasn't about the topic itself. It was about the years of tension that lay beneath it. It was the spark that lit the fuse on a powder keg of buried emotions. As their voices rose, the argument escalated. It moved from the kitchen to the living room, each word sharper than the last. Then, a sudden, chilling silence. What happened in those moments would become the central mystery of this entire case. When the dust settled, Brent was gone, vanished. Renee's story was that Brent, in a fit of anger, had stormed out of the house, saying he needed space and would be back. It was a plausible explanation, one that friends and family initially accepted. Couples fight. People need to cool off. But as one day turned into two, and 2 days turned into a week, a gnawing sense of dread began to creep in. Brent wasn't answering his phone. He hadn't shown up for work. He hadn't contacted anyone. This wasn't like him. The man who was so dependable, so rooted in his life, had simply disappeared off the face of the earth. Renee played the part of the worried wife flawlessly. She called Brent's friends. She spoke with his family, her voice laced with concern. She filed a missing persons report, telling police the same story. They had a fight, and he left. She seemed distraught, desperate for answers. The local police began their investigation, treating it as a standard missing person case. They searched local parks, checked hospitals and morgues, and put out alerts. They interviewed Renee multiple times, and each time, she stuck to her story, her composure unwavering. She was convincing. She painted a picture of a troubled man who might have just needed to escape his life for a while. For weeks, the investigation stalled. There were no leads, no sightings, no clues as to where Brent could have gone. The community rallied around Renee, offering support and sympathy to the heartbroken wife. But a few seasoned detectives felt a prickle of unease. Something about Renee's story, about her calm demeanor, just didn't sit right. The first major crack in Renee's story came from an unexpected source, Brent's truck. The vehicle was found abandoned in a desolate, remote area miles from their home. It was locked, and the keys were missing. This was a significant red flag. Why would Brent drive to such an isolated spot and just leave his truck? It made no sense. Investigators combed the area, but found no sign of Brent. The truck itself, however, told a story. Inside, detectives found subtle but crucial pieces of evidence that contradicted Renee's version of events. Forensic analysis revealed things that shouldn't have been there and missed things that should have. The timeline she had so carefully constructed was beginning to crumble. The focus of the investigation started to shift. Was this a case of a man who voluntarily walked away from his life? Or was it something far more sinister? The police were no longer just looking for a missing person. They were looking for a potential victim. With the discovery of the truck, the pressure on Renee intensified. Detectives brought her in for another round of questioning, this time armed with new evidence and a growing list of inconsistencies in her story. They confronted her with the discrepancies, the things she had said that didn't line up with the facts they were uncovering. They watched her closely, analyzing her every reaction, her every word. Under the bright lights of the interrogation room, the facade of the grieving wife began to crack. Her answers became more evasive. Her story started to change. She would contradict herself, trying to patch the holes in her narrative, but only succeeding in making them bigger. The detectives knew they were getting closer. The woman sitting across from them knew more than she was letting on. She was hiding a terrible secret, and they were determined to uncover it. The search for Brent was now a search for the truth. The turning point came when investigators, armed with a search warrant, descended on the home Renee and Brent had shared. They were looking for any evidence of a struggle, any clue that could tell them what really happened that night. And they found it. Using advanced forensic techniques, they discovered microscopic blood spatter in a room of the house that had been meticulously cleaned. It was Brent's blood. The amount was small, almost invisible to the naked eye, but it was undeniable proof that a violent event had taken place inside that home. The house was not just a home, it was a crime scene. The argument had not ended with Brent walking out the door. It had ended in bloodshed. This physical evidence was the nail in the coffin for Renee's story. She could no longer claim that Brent had simply left. The walls of her own home were now testifying against her. Faced with irrefutable forensic evidence, Renee's web of lies completely unraveled. Her story collapsed. The police arrested her, and the charge was no longer filing a false report. It was murder. The news sent shockwaves through the community. The woman they had pitied and supported was now accused of killing her own husband. As the case moved to trial, the prosecution laid out its timeline of events, pieced together from forensic evidence, cell phone records, and the holes in Renee's own statements. They argued that the argument that night had escalated to physical violence. In a moment of rage, Renee had killed Brent. What followed was not an act of panic, but a cold, calculated cover-up. She cleaned the crime scene with chilling precision, disposed of Brent's body, and then drove his truck to a remote location to stage a disappearance. She then wove a complex tapestry of lies, playing the role of the distraught wife for weeks, all to mislead investigators and escape justice. The trial was a media sensation. The courtroom was packed every day as the prosecution presented its case. They called forensic experts who explained the significance of the blood evidence. They showed cell phone data that tracked Renee's movements in the hours and days after Brent's disappearance, movements that corresponded with the dumping of his truck and, they alleged, his body. Friends and family were called to the stand, their testimony painting a picture of a marriage that was far from perfect. They spoke of the underlying tensions, the financial stress, and the growing distance between the couple. The defense fought back, attempting to portray Renee as a victim herself, a woman pushed to the edge. They tried to create reasonable doubt, suggesting that someone else could have been involved or that the evidence was circumstantial. But the weight of the evidence against her was overwhelming. The story she had told had too many holes, and the science told a different, more brutal story. The jury listened intently to weeks of testimony. They saw the crime scene photos, heard the expert analyses, and watched Renee's reactions as her life was dissected in open court. After deliberating, they returned with a verdict. Guilty. Renee was convicted of the murder of her husband, Brent. The woman who thought she had committed the perfect crime was sentenced to a long prison term. The judge, in sentencing her, spoke of the profound betrayal and the cold-hearted nature of her actions. She had not only taken her husband's life, but had also deceived everyone who cared about them, manipulating their sympathy while hiding her dark secret. Justice had been served, but it brought little comfort. A life had been tragically cut short, and another was now defined by a prison cell. The tragic story of Renee and Brent serves as a chilling reminder that the truth, no matter how deeply buried, has a way of coming to the surface. It shows how ordinary lives can be shattered by secrets, and how the most mundane of conflicts can escalate to unimaginable tragedy. This case was a puzzle, solved piece by piece through diligent police work, cutting-edge forensic science, and the relentless pursuit of the truth. It reminds us that behind closed doors, we never truly know the full story. Thank you for watching. If you found this story compelling, please like this video, subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into true crime cases, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update.